They called her weak. They mistook her silence for surrender and her composure for cowardice. But Sarah knew something they did not, that the bravest battles are not fought with raised voices or clenched fists. They are won in the quiet moments when your heart screams for revenge, but your mind chooses wisdom instead. In a world that celebrates instant reactions and viral clapbacks, she was learning an ancient art that most had forgotten the power of patience. This is the story of how choosing to wait and to breathe and to think before acting became her greatest act of courage. Sarah Martinez sat in her car outside the corporate office, gripping the steering wheel until her knuckles turned white. Inside her purse, her phone buzzed relentlessly with messages from colleagues and from friends and from her mother. Everyone had seen the email. Everyone knew what her boss, Patricia Holloway, had done. The email was a masterpiece of professional sabotage. Patricia had copied the entire executive team and carefully crafted it to make it look like Sarah had failed on the Henderson account, which was a project Sarah had poured 6 months of her life into. But Sarah knew the truth. She had the receipts and the documentation, and the proof that Patricia had deliberately withheld critical information and set impossible deadlines, and now was positioning herself as the hero who would salvage Sarah's so-called mistakes. Her best friend, Maya, had texted her saying to say something and not to let Patricia get away with this. Her colleague James wrote that she needed to reply to everyone and expose Patricia immediately. Even her mentor, who was the usually calm Dr. Richardson, had called and told Sarah to defend herself because her reputation was on the line. Every fiber of her being wanted to do exactly that. Her fingers hovered over her phone with a scathing reply already forming in her mind. She could copy everyone. She could attach the evidence. She could watch Patricia's credibility crumble in real time. But something stopped her. Sarah's mind drifted to her grandmother, Elena, who had passed away 2 years earlier. Elena had been a woman who had survived things that would have broken most people, including an abusive first marriage and discrimination in the workplace during the 1960s, and the loss of a child. Yet Sarah had never once heard her grandmother speak with bitterness. Elena used to say that when someone throws mud at you, that you have 2 choices. You can throw it back and both of you end up dirty, or you can step aside and let them stand alone in their mess. At the time, Sarah thought it sounded passive, and even weak. Now sitting in her car with her career seemingly on the line, she began to understand what her grandmother meant. Sarah took a deep breath and put her phone away. She started her car and drove home, fighting every instinct that told her to react immediately. That evening, while her phone continued to explode with messages and advice and outrage on her behalf, Sarah did something radical. She went for a run. She cooked herself dinner. She took a long bath. She journaled. She gave herself permission to feel the anger and the betrayal and the fear without letting those feelings dictate her actions. This was not weakness. This was strategy. This was strength. This was patience. The next morning, Sarah arrived at the office early. She did not send any emails. She did not confront Patricia. Instead, she requested a private meeting with the Chief Operating Officer, Michael Chen, who was known for his fairness and integrity. She brought her documentation, but she did not lead with accusations. She simply presented the facts calmly and professionally and let them speak for themselves. She explained the timeline of the Henderson project and showed the communications where she had requested resources that were denied and highlighted the ways the project parameters had changed without her input. She never once mentioned Patricia by name. She did not need to. The evidence made it clear. Michael listened carefully and asked thoughtful questions. At the end of the meeting, he thanked Sarah for bringing this to his attention and assured her that he would investigate thoroughly. Sarah left his office feeling lighter than she had in days. She had not reacted. She had responded. There was a world of difference between the two. A reaction is emotional and immediate and often regrettable. A response is thoughtful and strategic and powerful. Sarah had chosen the latter. Over the next 2 weeks, Sarah watched as the situation unfolded. Patricia grew increasingly defensive as Michael's investigation progressed. She sent multiple emails trying to justify her position, and each one made her look worse. She had emotional outbursts in meetings. She accused others of sabotaging her. Meanwhile, Sarah continued to do her work with quiet excellence. She did not gossip. She did not gloat. She did not engage in the drama that Patricia was creating. Her patience was not passive. It was active and intentional and strategic. She was allowing Patricia to expose herself without Sarah having to lift a finger. The breaking point came during a full executive meeting. Patricia, unable to contain herself any longer, made a snide comment about Sarah's competence in front of the entire leadership team. The room went silent. Everyone knew about the investigation. Everyone knew Patricia was scrambling, and in that moment, Sarah did something that shocked everyone, including herself. She smiled. Not a smirk or a triumphant grin, but a genuine, calm smile. She looked at Patricia and said thank you for sharing your perspective, and then she calmly presented the latest project update, which was ahead of schedule and under budget. The contrast was striking. Patricia looked unhinged. Sarah looked unshakable. After the meeting, 3 different executives approached Sarah privately. They apologized for not seeing Patricia's behavior sooner. They praised Sarah's professionalism. They told her that her composure under pressure had shown more leadership than any aggressive defense could have. One of them, the senior vice president of operations, offered Sarah a position on a new high-profile team that would effectively be a promotion. Sarah accepted. Within a month, Patricia was quietly moved to a different department with significantly reduced responsibilities. Sarah never celebrated this publicly. She never told people that she had been vindicated. She simply continued to excel at her work and build her career. But privately, she thought often of her grandmother and the wisdom that had once seemed so passive. Patience was not about being weak. It was about being wise enough to know that not every battle needs to be fought immediately, and that sometimes the most powerful response is a strategic non-response. Sarah's story spread through the office, though she never told it herself. Other women began to seek her out for advice. Young professionals asked her how she stayed so calm under pressure, and Sarah would tell them what her grandmother had taught her. She would explain that choosing patience over reaction does not mean accepting mistreatment. It means refusing to let someone else's chaos dictate your behavior. It means trusting that truth has a way of emerging when you give it time and space. It means understanding that your reputation is built not on how loudly you defend yourself, but on how consistently you show up with integrity. One young woman named Jennifer came to Sarah's office in tears. Her colleague had taken credit for her work in a presentation. Jennifer wanted to storm into their boss's office and demand justice. Sarah listened and then shared her own story. She told Jennifer that she understood the rage and the desire for immediate vindication, but she also encouraged her to pause and to document everything and to wait for the right moment and the right forum to present the truth. She reminded Jennifer that people who steal credit usually reveal themselves eventually, and that maintaining your own integrity was more important than forcing theirs to collapse. Jennifer took Sarah's advice. She waited. She documented. She continued to do excellent work. And 3 months later, when performance reviews came around, her boss, who was more observant than Jennifer had given him credit for, directly asked her about the discrepancy between her colleague's presentation and the work that was actually being produced. Jennifer calmly presented her documentation. Her colleague was reprimanded. Jennifer was promoted. And she came back to Sarah's office not in tears this time, but with gratitude. She told Sarah that learning to choose patience over reaction had changed not just her career, but her entire life. She was sleeping better. She was less anxious. She felt more in control. This became Sarah's quiet legacy. She never wrote a book or gave a TED Talk or became famous for her philosophy, but she changed lives one conversation at a time. She showed women that bravery is not always loud. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is nothing. Sometimes the most powerful move is to pause. Sometimes choosing patience over reaction is the ultimate act of courage because it requires you to trust yourself and trust the process and trust that justice does not always need your immediate intervention to occur. Years later, Sarah became an executive director at her company. She had opportunities to react poorly to many situations along the way. There were competitors who tried to undermine her, and colleagues who questioned her decisions, and moments when defending herself aggressively would have been justified. But each time she remembered her grandmother. Each time she chose patience. Each time she responded rather than reacted. And each time she emerged stronger and more respected and more successful. On the 10th anniversary of her grandmother's death, Sarah stood at Elena's grave with flowers in her hand. She told her grandmother about her career and about the women she had mentored and about the legacy of patience that Elena had given her. She thanked her for teaching her that true strength is not about how hard you can hit back, but about how well you can absorb a blow and keep moving forward with grace. She thanked her for showing her that patience is not weakness, but wisdom. She thanked her for the gift of knowing that choosing not to react is sometimes the bravest choice of all. As Sarah drove home that evening, she thought about all the battles she had chosen not to fight and all the wars she had won because of it. She thought about the peace she had maintained in her own heart by refusing to let other people's chaos become her own. She thought about the example she was setting for younger women who were watching and learning that there was another way to be brave, not with fists or fury, but with patience and persistence and unwavering faith in her own worth. The world had changed so much since her grandmother's time. Social media had created a culture where everyone was expected to respond immediately to everything, where silence was interpreted as guilt or weakness, where the fastest clapback got the most likes and the most viral moment won the day. But Sarah had learned that viral moments fade and that real power comes from consistency, not from spectacle. She had watched countless people destroy their own reputations by reacting too quickly and saying things in anger that could never be unsaid. She had seen careers ended by hasty emails and friendships destroyed by impulsive responses. And she had learned that the delete button does not exist in real life. Her approach to patience was not about being passive or accepting injustice. It was about being strategic. It was about understanding that timing matters and that context matters, and that how you say something is often more important than what you say. When she finally did respond to difficult situations, she did so from a place of calm rather than chaos. She did so with evidence rather than emotion. She did so in ways that built her credibility rather than destroyed someone else's. This made all the difference. Sarah also learned that patience gave her time to understand situations more deeply. In that initial moment when Patricia's email arrived, Sarah only saw betrayal and injustice. But by waiting and by observing and by investigating, she came to understand that Patricia was acting out of her own insecurity and fear. This did not excuse Patricia's behavior, but it did help Sarah respond with wisdom rather than vengeance. She could see that Patricia was drowning in her own inadequacy, and that anything Sarah did to attack her would only confirm Patricia's victim narrative. By stepping back and letting the truth emerge naturally, Sarah robbed Patricia of that narrative. There was no villain to point to. There was only Patricia's own actions speaking for themselves. This understanding transformed how Sarah led her team when she became an executive director. She created a culture where people were encouraged to pause before responding to challenges. She taught her team to ask themselves 3 questions before reacting to any situation. First, was this actually about me, or is this about the other person's issues? Second, what outcome do I actually want here? Third, will my immediate reaction help me achieve that outcome or hurt my chances? These 3 questions saved her team countless hours of unnecessary conflict and drama. They helped people distinguish between battles worth fighting and distractions worth ignoring. They created a workplace where thoughtfulness was valued over speed. Sarah's patience also extended to her personal life. When her sister made a thoughtless comment at a family dinner, Sarah did not snap back. When her partner forgot an important anniversary, Sarah did not immediately assume the worst. When a friend betrayed a confidence, Sarah did not end the friendship without first seeking to understand. This did not mean she became a doormat. It meant she gave people room to be human and to make mistakes and to grow. It meant she built relationships based on understanding rather than on keeping score. And it meant that when she did choose to walk away from a relationship or to set a boundary, it was done with clarity and conviction rather than in the heat of anger. The courage required for this kind of patience was immense. Every day, Sarah had to fight against her conditioning, against the voice in her head that said, standing up for yourself means fighting back immediately. She had to resist the pressure from well-meaning friends who urged her to be more aggressive. She had to trust herself when everyone else was telling her she was wrong. This took more strength than any confrontation would have required. This was the bravery that most people never recognized because it was quiet and internal and invisible. That was the lesson. That was the legacy. That was what it meant to be truly brave. Choosing patience over reaction was not the easy path. It was the powerful one. And Sarah Martinez had proven it every single day of her extraordinary life. She had shown that a brave woman is not one who never feels anger or fear or the desire for revenge. A brave woman is one who feels all of those things and chooses wisdom anyway. She had demonstrated that real strength lies not in the ability to strike back, but in the discipline to hold back until the right moment. She had lived proof that patience is not weakness, but the ultimate expression of self-control and self-respect. And in doing so, she had created a legacy that would outlive her and inspire generations of women to come.